Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity today to speak with Ryan Yackel, who is Chief Marketing Officer and Product Evangelist for Databand, which in July of 2022 was acquired by IBM. Ryan, thanks for joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Ryan, been with Databand since January of this year, and we got acquired by IBM in July. So it's been a pretty crazy ride so far, but obviously it's been a very fruitful experience, especially in the space of data, and data observability is definitely the hottest topic probably going on. If it's not the hottest, it's probably in the top three, at least of what I've seen in the space. So definitely been a fun experience to be here and see how Databand's been in the market around data observability.
Excellent. So I think this would be a great conversation because Databand is, in a sense, the best of both worlds. You got to start up with innovative technology, and now the ability to integrate data observability, which is a much larger set of data management capabilities. So to start at the beginning, maybe you can tell us about Databand's founding. How did it get started? What were the founders looking at in terms of the opportunity that they identified?
Yeah, so our founders are Josh, who's our CEO, Victor's our Chief Product Officer, and then Evgeny, who is our CTO. Obviously, things are changing with the acquisition, but yeah, they all started this around 3 years ago, and we got a lot of VC funding led by Excel Partners, so major VC firm. And one of their main problem they were trying to solve was actually problems that they were experiencing in their organizations today. So, or at the time. So all of them had experience working in data. Josh came from Sisense, obviously a massive company out there in the BI space. But basically, as they were working on data products and data analytics and ML models, things like that, they kept on experiencing this problem with getting incomplete or inaccurate or just plain old bad data. Like that was a problem that they were experiencing. And so I think a lot of times when people talk about data observability, they may not even say data observability, or for the most part, they're not going to, because they really don't know how to qualify what they're actually experiencing. Because a lot of times people may think of like data testing or data quality or data reliability. Those are all words, but it's a plethora of other tools out there that claim to do the same thing. Really, what you're looking for is an observability solution that can detect issues and data incidents more in a shift left manner, so more upstream during their coding process and their pipeline process, and catch it before it actually hits that end user, that consumer. And so they were experiencing it on the consumer side a lot, and they realized that, well, way to solve this is really to solve it at the producer arena where data platform teams and data engineering teams are, so that it doesn't flow downstream into these other dependent systems that are consuming the data. So that's where they kind of came up with the idea, and they launched Databand about 2-3 years ago. We've got a lot of great customers like FanDuel and Trax and Oracle and Agoda and a few others that are out there that we can mention publicly. But yeah, I mean, we're really trying to solve these very complex data engineering, data platform challenges that they have, because they're responsible for 80 to 90% of the data that flows through an organization today. And without somebody that's actively observing and monitoring what's going on, they can feel like they're underwater pretty quickly.
So tell me more about what Databand's differentiators are in the market. This is obviously a crowded space with a lot of startups doing some pretty innovative things. And there's also the notion that data quality is a problem that's existed for 30 years. So there are plenty of companies that, I think, to build on your point earlier, might not be using the word data observability, but are simply helping address basic data quality issues, maybe in less of a cloud environment than data observability. But tell me more about differentiators. What are the 2 or 3 or 4 ways in which Databand wins deals versus the competition?
Yeah, for sure. So, and again, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of tools out there in the space. There's a lot of, I know Eggerson's done reports and things like that with some of our main competitors. But what I would say is the main differentiator, if you look at our posture and how we go to market in the space before we get into like feature comparisons and things like that, is what I would say is we have a more proactive and shift left approach than most of the observability tools that are out there today. So a lot of observability tools are really looking at the warehouse layer. They're looking at doing some SQL checks within data as it's at rest, right? And we do the same thing. We have integrations to tools like dbt and Snowflake and things like that. But what we want to be able to do is catch these issues way more upstream, so at the point of ingestion. And so we really focus on data observability as it's in motion, data in motion versus data at rest, even though we do both. And we want to detect things a lot earlier in the process to resolve things before it gets to that resting spot. So from an overall perspective, like that's one of our main drivers. And a lot of times when we talk to customers, they're using a lot of open source tools like Apache Airflow, or using Spark for doing transformations. They're Airflow has got so many different flavors out there, whether it's on-prem or it's you have a Airflow as a service provider that you're using that as well. Also, if you're building like coded pipelines in Python or Scala or PySpark or Java, like we can connect into a lot of these different processes you have if you're a code-driven data engineering team. And we really try to solve that particular problem more upstream than downstream. So one is just like a more proactive approach that we have to it, and a more shift left in terms of our posture. The second one is really around the coverage of technologies that we have from left to right. So I mentioned some of those earlier, but the reason why that's important is because a lot of people will say things like, oh yeah, we integrate to a certain tool, but it only stops there. So if you say, oh, we integrate to Snowflake, okay, well, do you integrate to Airflow? Do you integrate to Spark? Do you integrate to the ways that you're kicking off like an Airflow process to a dbt job, to a dbt test? Do you have all those connections in place? Probably not. And so the second one is really around the cross stack visibility that we're giving, and the interconnectivity of the dependent systems that are in through observability. And the last one is really around collecting all this different metadata that we have. We collect probably more metadata out there, and we have an SDK and APIs to do this in a way that other tools can't. And what that allows us to do is get to discovering more granular data incidents that are going on for the real-time alerting that you're going to be getting. And so what we say at Databand is pretty simple, like, and like, why are you guys different? Well, we're more proactive in the shift left model. And then what are the benefits you're really trying to get out of is we want to help you detect things earlier, resolve them faster, and then deliver trustworthy data. That's literally what we say every time we talk to our customer. It's reducing your mean time to detection and improving your mean time to resolution so that you have confidence to hit your data SLAs, or data SLOs, as they call them at times, in your organization.
Yeah, very much a sign of success, I think, for a data observability platform is the ability to find problems, to your point, before executives or customers or other critical data consumers do. When you do, that's really a win, because you can fix it beforehand before it causes business damage.
And it's, but I was gonna say is too, like the other thing too is like it's really detecting the unknown. Like that's the other thing. Like when we talk to customers, a lot of times they have this black box and they can't see. They're taking the data, they're pushing it through orchestration and ingestion tools. It's landing in their warehouse, and they're kind of like just hoping that it ran and it executed, right? Oh, the pipeline ran, it was green. Well, that doesn't mean that the data got there in a correct way, right? And I used to work in a software test automation company, and testers always fought with developers, right? About developers would say, well, our Jenkins pipeline ran, it was green. There's no reason why, the code's fine. And then the tester's like, well, why is our shopping cart functionality totally gone on the UI? Like, that's a problem. Like, I don't care if your pipeline was green, it doesn't mean that you delivered reliable and quality software.
So Databand addresses data pipeline performance observability as well as data quality observability. And when you talked about the breadth of support you have, and then examples of the types of pipelines you're enabling and the developers that you're enabling, I think we get a sense of the type of customer that you're targeting. But maybe you could unpack that a little bit more. What are the types of enterprises and the types of teams that are going to find the highest value with Databand, and what use cases are they addressing?
Yeah, I mean, the most of our customers that we talk to today are they're doing three things. They're building internal data analytics dashboards, obviously, to make financial decisions. So there's customers of ours that part of their whole process is just getting stuff into a Salesforce report or a financial report, and the analysts down the line are wanting to make sure that the data is accurate. I talked to somebody at a recent conference recently, and they were a major insurance provider, and they came to us and they were like, "Hey, we're the analysts on our data team. Do you have something that like would help our data engineering team not give us bad data?" And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. You're asking that question." I was like, I can't wave a magic wand, but I get what the problem you're describing, which is because I asked them, I said, "Well, how do you notify them if there's an issue?" They go, "We do it manually. We have to." And so you're like, "Oh, okay. So you found the issue all the way down here, but the issue happened up here. Like, how long did it take for you to find that particular issue out?" Right. So that's
Yeah.
one. It's like more teams are more internal analytics focused. They're looking at that. The second one, which is probably our core customer base, is they're building data products. Like they're actually building data products like either websites or sports betting tools, or they're building streaming services, things like that. Like they're actually building products that are externally facing to their customer. And so when it comes to us, we're monitoring their production pipelines. Like they're in production today facing a customer, and monitoring that in a way that if any time that there's an issue in production with the data pipeline or data process issue, we can alert them right away. Very much in the same way that application performance monitoring tools are doing the same thing for web applications or infrastructure or microservices. We're doing that same thing, but for data pipelines, right? And the last one is really around ML and AI products that they're building, or learning models that they're doing. Trax Retail is an example of this. They have, they had, I don't know how many exactly ML deep learning pipelines that they had initially, but when they were evaluating tools to help them with the problems they were having in their ML pipelines, it was basically they needed something to help them monitor as they layered on more and more pipelines. And so they only had a certain amount of team, or a certain amount of people on their team. They couldn't just automatically, duplicate the person next to them, right? But they needed to add on more ML pipelines and new models to help get better model accuracy with their scanning bot that they have in retail stores that would tell you if, like, hey, this thing's, low on inventory or high on inventory, or missing something. And so they use Databand to monitor every single new pipeline that they add on to their business. And it frees up their engineering team to not worry about it, right? I always like to give the connection that we're basically installing a bunch of cameras, like thousands of cameras, into your pipeline to tell you if there's issues going on, and then also there's any issues going on in the data set. And then another analogy I like to give a lot, which is, Formula One racing. Everyone likes Formula One racing, it's like one of the hottest, sports that's going out there today. I'm a NASCAR guy, I guess, because I'm in the South, but I've never been to a NASCAR event. But I want to get to, I would definitely want to get to Formula One racing. But what's the goal of like Formula One? Like their whole goal is to drive the car as fast as they can without it blowing up and not running into something and win the race. Well, how does it do that? Well, it's got hundreds and hundreds of sensors on the car as you're driving the car to let you know if you need to speed up or slow down or address something, while at the same time not prohibiting you from going as fast as you can if you're okay. And so we like to view data engineering teams and platform teams as they're driving the car, they're trying to go as fast as they can, deliver the data, but they also need to know right away if there's something wrong so they can address it and get back in and going as fast as they can.
It's a great analogy. And the other, the reason it makes sense as well is that you want cars to go very fast. So that's akin to pipeline performance, but you want quality. You don't want a breakdown. So that's akin to data quality. It makes a lot of sense. One of the themes in our research at Eckerson Group and with this market landscape report, as well as the CDO Tech Event, is that data observability is part of a larger set of data management activities. And as I mentioned at the outset, that's one of the reasons that this acquisition by IBM raises interesting opportunities. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how Databand of data observability contributes to this data fabric platform from IBM.
Yeah, so I mean, we have really like two angles of how data observability is playing into a full stack observability, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then our data fabric. And so from a data fabric perspective, IBM's approach to data fabric is a little bit different than like a data mesh or other things out there like a data lake or data warehouse. It's really a set of solutions and architecture to meet customers where they are and deliver solutions for them. And one of those is data integration. So data integration, data orchestration, they have a solution called Data Stage, which is very a lot of different data pipeline tools that are out there today. And so we integrate directly into their next gen version of Data Stage to allow you to basically monitor the same way we would monitor Airflow or DBT or Spark, same way, and let you know if there's any issues in your data stage flows going on so that you can address them and fix them, right? An example is if we have a data stage flow that every time it runs, for example, it's consuming more and more, or we're writing and reading more and more and more data, but it's also consuming more and more and more resources. And so we can track that job or track that flow and set alerts around how long that job is going to notify us if we're seeing some latency in that particular job. So if we say, we expect this job to complete, 50 times a week or day, and we expect it to run 120 seconds each time. Well, as soon as it breaches that 120 seconds, we want to know about it right away, because what could be happening unbeknownst to the team is the pipeline is slowing down over time, and that's going to lead to data delays and data delivery. And so what we can do is we can alert on that and say, oh, you need to add more resources to this data stage flow. Same thing with other tools that we integrate to as well. So that's how we're integrating today within the Fabric organization. There's lots of other solutions I could talk about, but that's really where the data fabric we play into, at least today. And then obviously a part of your data fabric can have all these other tools as well. So any other open source tool you're using, we also integrate to that. From a full stack observability offering is the way we see it is there's really like three areas that, and there's more areas of this too, but three main core areas of observability. There's application performance monitoring or application observability. That's a product at IBM called Instana, which competes with products like New Relic and Datadog. That's really looking at what I talked about earlier, is looking at your application performance and microservices and infrastructure and cloud spend, things like that. That's what it's looking at for there. Then on the other side, there's this AL ML model observability. Is any diffs that are going on in your models, like how can we identify that? That's a product we have called OpenScale. And then data observability fits into data pipelines and data process quality. So then we're looking at the actual pipelines itself that's feeding possibly an ML model or an application that's consuming it. And so there's a lot of other observability terms out there, like you got business process observability, customer experience observability, that's also coming up. But we view it kind of through those three buckets of application performance monitoring, data observability or pipeline observability, and then ML and AI model observability. So we're really, trying to offer customers at least we think there's the three core tenets, at least right now, of observability that they can pick and choose from or use all together in one area.
Yeah, it's great. It dovetails nicely with the research we've done, where we have a taxonomy of 5 versions of observability. So data quality and data pipelines are part of data observability. You've got that through collaboration with Instana. You're helping with operations observability, or sort of the new version of application performance management, and then also model observability, which assists model governance and so many aspects of that. So Ryan, really appreciate your time, and thank you for educating the Eckerson community on your offerings.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.